I called this segment Why Trump Derangement Syndrome because I want to introduce something to you that I just watched portions of over the weekend. I will watch the whole thing. But before I get to telling you about that, I just want you to step back and think for a moment how hysterical the reaction has been to the election of Donald Trump in 2016. This may be obvious to say, but you could just run down a list of things we all could list. The entire concocted frame-up of the Trump campaign, later known as the Trump-Russia collusion, which was simply the Russia collusion hoax, and after millions of dollars, all the investigation, nothing to it. But it was an orchestrated, broadly engaged in mission to attack President Trump, not just to give him a few black eyes that maybe would look bad during his presidency, but to try to cause him to be removed from the presidency. You had the completely cooked up, non-existent collusion hoax, followed by the impeachment effort. You had the effort to impeach him. And honestly, if you made this in a movie script or a book script, someone would tell you, this is preposterous, this is silly, you can't sell this kind of story, that you could actually impeach a president for doing something that the opposing party's president actually did and said on live camera, but the person being impeached did nothing of the sort. And yet these people, now when I say these people, it's the leaders of the Democrat Party, it is a ruling elite class in Washington, D.C., not just in Congress and the Senate, but in the agencies around the federal government. It is the media, it is Hollywood, it's the entire orchestrated effort to remove a president over having done absolutely nothing wrong. Other little alleged scandals along the way included his paying someone out of not taxpayer dollars, but his own money, apparently paid people to keep stories quiet, which I guess many famous people have done. The point is, there has been effort after effort after effort after effort to destroy President Trump. And I talk about it quite often, just from the perspective that Obama, in the 8 years of President Obama preceding President Trump's victory in 2016, you had 8 years of the effort to turn this country radical socialist leftist. That was the effort of the Obama administration, the commitment, that was the fundamental transformation that the Obama administration tried to bring about. Not just through pushing through socialized medicine in his very first 2 years, which he could do because he still had the White House, the Senate, and the House, so he could do that. But you had the ongoing effort to massively expand the power and control of the federal government over an otherwise free market economy. You had surrender of jobs moving away, the growth of the welfare state, the dependency state. Many, many steps any card-carrying socialist would engage in, President Obama did during those 8 years. But as we have seen also, and we talked about in this show many times, you saw the weaponization of the federal government against the American people. We all saw it with the IRS, the targeting of groups that were trying to get organized in some way as Tea Party groups and get their tax-exempt certification of 501c3 or 4. And you had the IRS simply refusing to cooperate, refusing to follow the law, just literally just strangling these organizations as they try to get their message out. So you had that weaponization. You clearly had the weaponization, as all of America is aware of now, of the FBI and the DOJ against candidate Trump and against President Trump, the actual use of people in federal power to push the agenda of the radical left, the Marxist left in this country that is now on the rise. So there is a video out now, a video that I want to tell you a little bit more about, and I'm going to watch the whole thing, but it's a video by a woman named Millie Weaver, and she called it Shadowgate. Millie Weaver's the woman, Shadowgate, and she has apparently a following in she's not on a major network program, but she has a following, and she's basically making the argument that what we saw uncovered, America saw uncovered, and millions of Americans were aware of, for example, Edward Snowden coming forward and talking about how there is a massive spying network, spying operation engaged in at the federal government level by the NSA on the American people, not just on suspects for crimes, not just people they have a reasonable basis to be concerned about, but just massive data collection on every American and certainly on people in power in our government. So you had that massive thing happening. You had Snowden come forward. Now he released all of that. So the American public became aware of it. We became aware. Apparently, John Brennan lied about that to Congress when he was testifying. So you had acknowledgement by an insider of massive gathering of data by the federal government, failure to remove that data from the system, even if it was picked up, accidentally or circumstantially, holding on to that data. So you had data collection by the federal government. You had Snowden letting people know that happened. And what this woman is talking about, Millie Weaver is talking about in her Shadowgate video, is the idea that there was ongoing under the Obama administration a massive misuse of the kind of data the federal government can and does collect to literally force the radical transformation, the fundamental transformation of America away from a free country into the Marxist leftist controlled country that President Obama dreams of. That is his mission, that is his national identity. So she talks about the idea, or I will float the idea. Let me just think about the things that have been inexplicable. Why would Chief Justice John Roberts, formerly apparently a relatively conservative constitutionalist, all of a sudden go AWOL? Why, in opinion after opinion, would he begin siding with the radical left in issuing decisions in the Supreme Court that have no basis in constitutional law? And the liberal wing of the court is not ever about following the Constitution. They're about making up stuff as they go along. But John Roberts basically has switched sides. He's joined the radical Marxist left, represented by the 4 liberal justices on the Supreme Court. Why? Could this data collection effort have resulted in information that was used against him? And I'm raising this point to say her point in this video is the idea that we are only beginning to understand the level of corruption at the level of malevolent societal manipulative control engaged in by the Obama administration against Americans using the data they were collecting. We had a very large, unusually large number of Republicans announce, people who are members of the United States House, U.S. Congress, announced they weren't running again. Many people, it's one thing if you decide not to run after a long time or because you have some other reason everyone's aware of, some family issue. But we had an inordinate number, a large number of Republicans announcing they weren't going to run again in 2018, I think in 16, but definitely in 18. And many people asked, why are so many not running? I asked different members. I asked people who've been on my show, members of Congress, what's happening here? And they all said, well, people have different reasons. They have businesses, they have lives. But there is growing concern that this massive abuse of the NSA's ability to gather data on individual Americans, to keep it, to use it against them, was weaponized against the American people under the Obama administration for decades. And for the 2 terms of the Obama administration, bringing about radical change in any way they could, including using information arguably illegally obtained, most certainly illegally retained, to steer America in the radical leftist agenda, the radical leftist direction that President Obama always wanted. This video, and not just this one woman's video, although I think she's put a pretty persuasive case together, but other people making the point, we really, really need to have everything that was so corrupt, so manipulative, so dishonest, so abusive that happened under the Obama administration. We have to have that be uncovered. It all has to come out. So I'll go back to the question I started my first 5 with today. What explains Trump derangement syndrome? Why is the left so crazed against President Trump? And a big reason, and it's not just the left, be very, to happily include everyone who is worthy of being questioned or accused about this. There are people on the right in our country, members of the United States Senate, Republicans, who also seem to be behaving oddly, saying they're going to pursue hearings, they're going to get to the bottom of things, and never doing it, always having one excuse after the next. We were going to dig in and find out, but then we thought we'll hold back, and it never happens. So the answer to my question at the first 5 about why is Trump derangement syndrome so widely held It is in the media, it's in the DOJ, the FBI. The entire orchestrated attempt to remove President Trump may just be because all these people involved in this massive effort to spy on American people, to use the data against the American people, maybe those people got deeply worried that a guy like President Trump, whose his life's an open book. He is a guy who's been in the media and headlines for decades. He's a billionaire, his lifestyle well known to people, and a guy who campaigned on, who promised, I'm going to drain the swamp. I'm going to find out what's happening in Washington. I'm going to clean up Washington. Maybe those people engaged in this massive, illicit, nefarious, manipulative information gathering and use of information against the American people, maybe that whole cabal decided, you know what, Trump could be a real danger. Because Trump really may get to the bottom of all that we have been doing. Trump really may expose all of what we've been doing over 8 years plus. And for that reason alone, Trump had to be attacked, maligned. There had to be an effort to remove him every step of the way. We'll follow this story more. As I say, I'll watch the whole video. I'll research some more of it. But many of the pieces she's pointing to are irrefutable. The NSA has abused its power in collecting data. It apparently is still doing that today. It is retaining data it doesn't need to be retaining. The entire unmasking fiasco. We had Rosemary Collyer of the FISA court pointing out what is the reason all of these NSA requests were made and the unmasking requests were made, and then the data collected was then shared with agencies, non-government entities outside of the NSA. Other agencies and organizations, not government agencies, private agencies, very connected to the Obama administration, run by Obama allies and affiliates. That information gathered by NSA came to the attention of the FISA court when they finally had the big blow up and said, what are you doing here? And you had Rosemary Collyer writing her famous lengthy memo asking why in the world was all this unmasking done and why was it given to all of these non-governmental entities, which include, as I say, entities run by Obama cohorts, colleagues, and allies. There's a lot to this story, and there's a lot of explanation, I think, coming out of why the left has been so hysterically determined to remove President Trump. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.